Hi, welcome. Hi, Rachel. Paulina, hi. Antonina, how are you?
Very good. How are you?
Great. Happy Saturday, everybody. Hi, Barbara. Everybody jump in the chat and tell us where you're participating from. Christina, hi. It's good to see you. Hi, Gwen. Gwen from Atlanta. Alaska. Oh my gosh. Christina, what time is it in Alaska?
There we go. Hi, it's 8 o'clock.
Thank you for joining. Are you joining with some coffee?
I am. I just got my coffee.
Nice. Look at that. I am so impressed. Okay, so who is joining for the first time?
That would be me. I'm joining for the first time.
Okay, well, welcome. So then I want to introduce myself real quick. I know Christina knows me. I recognize your name. So I'm Ann Pearson, the founder of the Paralegal Boot Camp, and I created this monthly Paralegal Growth Hour to do something a little bit different. Because if you've followed me for a while, you know that I create a lot of courses, well, some of the courses like litigation, and personal injury and the RISE legal support program. They're more for paralegals who are earlier in their career, like 5 years and under. Although we do have some litigation paralegals who take the litigation boot camp with 8 years of experience and still gain it. And primarily a lot of the content on my blog is directed to help new paralegals, especially if they can't afford to take the courses. And so I thought we need a place where we can talk about growth things instead of how do I find a job as a new paralegal, all of that kind of stuff. And so it's not that new paralegals aren't welcome here. Of course you are. But it's more about I'm a paralegal now. How do I grow my career? And or I'm dealing with this problem that's impeding me from growing my career. So I did get questions, and you're welcome. We'll have plenty of time for live questions for us to just talk about things. But when I give a question, if this is the first time that you've attended, feel free to jump in the chat and give me your contribution, how you would give this person some advice. And so I only had 3 questions this month, which means we'll probably have a lot of time for other questions or maybe end early, whatever, but I'll be here for a whole hour if there are questions. And I really appreciate you guys joining in on a Saturday. I know it's time away from family and friends and doing things that you might like gardening or going to the beach or whatever. But I do schedule these on Saturdays because I know that sometimes it's just impossible to attend at 12 o'clock on a Wednesday at work. So welcome. All right, let's get started. And what's interesting, so all 3 of these submissions said that it was okay to use their name, which is cool. I don't have to pretend like I don't know their name. And interestingly enough, the first question came from an attorney. So I forget that I have a lot of attorneys on my email list. And so this one came from Roberta. Let me just look at the participants and see if Roberta is attending. Don't see her in the participant list. So Roberta is an attorney and she asked, "What is the best way I can support my paralegals when adding daily tasks in a way not to seem overbearing or micromanaging?" Okay, you guys, you got to jump in the chat on this one. Come on. If you had the ability to tell your attorney how to add daily tasks to your list in a way that was not or didn't seem overbearing or micromanaging, this is your opportunity to speak your mind. This is a perfect question. So I'm going to go slow on my answer on this one to give you guys lots of time to type, and or you can jump in on audio after I give my answer if you want, but I know sometimes it's easier to type it out. And if you type it out because we're recording it and in the recording the chat doesn't show up, then I'll read the chat message. But tell me if you're doing a lengthy chat, tell me at the beginning of the chat if you want to stay anonymous, if you don't want me to read your name. Okay, Roberta, first of all, I have to give you huge credit for even thinking about this. To have the concern, how can I do this without seeming overbearing or micromanaging? So huge kudos to that because I want to say you're probably already, the fact that you're even thinking about how to do it in that way, you're already 90% ahead of every other attorney. So, and probably some of the paralegals on here are asking, what firm is Roberta with? Because I want to come work for Roberta. So I love that for you, Roberta. So first, this would be my advice is delegate when you're adding on those daily tasks and you want to do it so you don't have to micromanage the tasks. Delegate with context, not just the task. The reason why I think that a lot of attorneys have to feel like they need to micromanage is because they're just assigning a task saying, draft a motion to dismiss, review this contract, draft this, right? And that's the only delegation part. And instead, if you gave some context, then your paralegal would know more how to do it without you having to micromanage. For example, why? Why are they doing it? What's the end result or the goal? And if they're not wrapped up in that particular file or case or client and don't know what's going on, then tell them what's going on. Because I always say, like, one of the things that I say in the billable hour boot camp is your time entry descriptions have to always answer the what did I do and why did I do it. And a lot of paralegals will say, well, Anne, what if I don't know the why? What if the attorney just hands me something and doesn't tell me why I'm doing it? And I say, if a paralegal doesn't know why they're doing it, then you can't do as good of a job. It's just impossible. You have to know the why. So give your paralegal the why and the what. That would be my first tip. Let me think about this. My second one would be to set a priority and a deadline. So priority and deadline, kind of two things actually. Priority is, have you already given them four other things to do today and now you're handing them a fifth thing? Then, if that's priority, say to them, and the priority for this is above everything else I've given you to do today. And the deadline being an exact deadline. When do you really need it back? And with that, let's say it's a big project and it's going to take a week or so to do, then let them know that there are things happening in that week that could mean you need it sooner. For example, the deadline's a week from now, but oh, by the way, I'm going to be on vacation for 4 of those 5 days, right? Give them that kind of context when you're giving them the deadline. If it's a big project, even if it's not a big project, ask for check-ins. Give them an example of what good looks like, what you would expect. If you have a template or a form, or you know of a case or a client file that had something similar before that, give it to them so that they know. I remember one of the comments from one of the people in my litigation boot camp was what her frustration was is she was never told what good looks like. And I'll never forget that when she said that. I just never understood what good looked like. Nobody said this is what a good motion to dismiss should look like, right? So give them a template or lead them to a place where they can easily find something if you already know this is the way you like it done. But bigger than that, I would say is ask them for a check-in. So if it's, let's say you're getting ready for a deposition, when you've got the first 1/3 of it done, or when you're 3 hours into it, come check in with me so I can make sure that you're on the right path. Because there's nothing worse than having some project where you're putting together 10 witness notebooks or something, and you get through witness notebook number 9, and the attorney says, oh no, that's not how I wanted it. Give me a hand raise. How many has that happened to you? You can do the little reaction too on the hand raise. And here's what I would say for paralegals to be on the proactive side. And this is why I tell you if you're not going to check in with them, then ask them to check in with you because I tell paralegals to do this as much as possible is to go to them when you're an hour or two in if it's a 8 hour project or a notebook or two in if it's a 10 notebook project and say, this is what I've done so far. Is this what you had in mind? So ask them to do that. Oh, Roberta, I just love that. I love it. So those would be my top four or five tips. Um, I want to read what Gwen wrote. I wish the attorney would trust that I know what needs to be done and give me the time to do it instead of immediately assigning it as a task. My boss moves the goalposts all the time. She forgets previous instructions and questions why it was done the way it was because that was the instruction. And then she changes her mind about how things should be done. Oh, Gwen, oh my gosh, that was one. It was very similar. Okay, I'm going to switch these around and bring that one up next, I think. All right, hold on. I was going to do Stacy next, but I'm going to do Myrna based on Gwen's comment. I can't believe this is, I swear to you, this was not from Gwen. This is from, and she said I could use her name. This was from Myrna. How do you handle a situation where well, this, okay, I guess it's not exactly. I thought it was exactly, but moving the goalpost is a little bit different. But how do you handle a situation where you know you are correct about a procedure, but the attorney you work with disagrees, is combative, and makes you feel like you do not know what you are doing? Then you try it their way, and when it goes wrong, it's your fault. Gwen smiling. And Antonina. Okay, so maybe we address that kind of like the other part of your question separately, or not your question, but your comment. Okay, Myrna. Let me read that one more time. How do you handle a situation where you know you are correct about a procedure, but the attorney you work with disagrees, is combative, and makes you feel like you do not know what you are doing? Then you try it their way, and when it goes wrong, it's your fault. Okay, Myrna. Number one, I would say stop trying to win a verbal battle with an attorney. Even if they've only been practicing law for a couple of years, they spent 3 years in law school learning how to win an argument. So it's to me, it's just that's just going to frustrate you even more. It's going to put you in a really bad mindset. So stop trying to win that battle. In addition to that, I would say, knowing that, right, you're not going to win the battle. Um, they own the firm, right? If you're working for a small firm, if they're an attorney, maybe in a big firm, or a partner in a big firm, essentially they're the boss, they're the owner. So if they want it done the wrong way, then that's totally their prerogative. Now, I get the problem with then it's your fault. So here's what I would do with that. Follow up with so I'm assuming that you're getting this assignment in person. If they're being combative, I can't imagine that kind of back and forth would go through an email, but maybe so. But even so, whether it's in person or not, but this comes across better in person. Do a reframe and say, okay, let me understand. I want to make sure that I understand how you want this done. So even though the court rules say that we can't do this, you want it done like this. I just want to make sure I understand that that's the way you want it. So verbally say it. Don't say it in a sarcastic way. You're not trying to win an argument. Just reframe it as, let me just make sure I understand that even though the court rules say we can't do it that way, this is the way you want it done, and be specific, blah, 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 one, two, three, four. They say yes and get out of my office, whatever, because they're combative. Then back to your office, send a recap email. And let me make sure that I'm clear about this. I do not normally subscribe to the CYA method of working. I really feel like if you have to spend your entire time as a paralegal sending CYA emails, you're working in the wrong place. If you feel that threatened, which will lead me, I want to give you an idea on that one. But in this case, I think you do have to send a recap. It's and only because from the sounds of it, let me go back to read this. Then you try it their way, and when it goes wrong, it's your fault. I think you in particular have to have a recap email. So you've said it verbally, now in the recap email. Now you don't have to put in the recap email. In fact, I wouldn't recommend, don't say, let me understand that this is how you want it. You're just sending a recap email saying, I just wanted to recap. This is the way I'm doing the project and be very specific. One, two, three, four, five. And this is what you want. That's it. That doesn't mean that that recap email is going to save you from combativeness when it goes wrong. All it means is you've got it documented on paper to remind them. And after enough times, then they might actually listen to you, is why I would do it. Which then that leads me to enough times. How many is enough? I would say, especially if you're doing the recap email, then you have a record of how many times this happens. If this happens once a month because that's just the way your attorney is every once in a while, but if this is happening on a weekly or several times a week basis, then I would say you're working in the wrong place. That's not the kind of environment where you're going to be able to grow, where you're constantly feeling like you're on the defense and have to protect your career or your job. And I'm just going to be really frank and honest with you guys here. In the end, if an attorney, I'm assuming this has happened to Myrna. I want to see if Myrna's on here. Myrna, are you on here? I don't see. No. If this is happening on a regular basis and you feel like they are saying then that it's your fault, then you do have to be careful about your job security. Because in the end, if they decide that they want to let you go because they've been embarrassed by too many mistakes or whatever, and they're blaming it on you, even though you've got the recap email, in the end, they'll do it if they want to do it, regardless. So I would say evaluate whether or not that's the right environment that you want to be in. Oh, she is on here. Anybody have any well, so Myrna says, or Gwen said, I have that issue as well. If you want to jump on, Myrna, and give some more context or see if I can help you a little bit more with that one, feel free. I don't see you on video, so maybe you're not available on video. Okay. All right. The third one, and then we're going to jump back to normally I would say that chat isn't the best place, but I could not figure out how to add the Q&A. Oh, I see you've got your hand raised. Let me see if I can unmute you, Myrna. You should be able to unmute yourself. All right, sorry guys. Okay. Now we're moving on to Stacy. Let's see if Stacy is here. I don't see a Stacy. Okay, Stacy says, I am currently in a paralegal role, but 90% of my job is administrative, which I absolutely hate. I've expressed concerns to my supervisor, but I don't think anything will change. Should I begin looking for another job or suck it up? Now, Stacy added some context here that said that she is 51 and wondering if she's too old to switch jobs or switch jobs at this age. So I want to start there because that's the easiest one to answer. Absolutely not. Okay. So I'm 57 and I could easily go get a job if I wanted to at a law firm. Um, your 50s, especially your early 50s, but anytime into your 50s and even early 60s, but especially your 50s, you're in your prime. It is so hard for law firms to find truly experienced paralegals. So I'm assuming, I guess, I wish you were on here, Stacy, so I could ask you. Oh, you are. Oh, okay. So I don't, maybe other people, maybe Roberta was on here too, and I didn't realize it because your names on there aren't, they don't have your first names on here. So if you want to jump on audio, Stacy, you can. At 51, let's assume maybe you only have 10 years of experience. You didn't start right out of college like I did. You are prime employment material for law firms. 51 is just wipe that thought right off your screen or your whatever you were typing. We can talk about it more if you want or if anybody wants. For the administrative work, that's the bigger issue. I suggest have one more conversation with them because in the context, she also said she's had conversations about this. Have one more conversation, but do it a little bit differently, assuming that you haven't done this yet. Bring the data, whether it's HR or attorneys or whatever, management, they love the data. So track your time for whatever would be a relevant time period, whether it's weekly, monthly. If you have a billable hour requirement, this is even better. Jump in the chat, Stacy, and tell me if you have a billable hour requirement because then you're already tracking what your billable hours are. And if you're not tracking your admin time too, then start tracking that under an admin number because the conversation you need to have with them is about the value or the dollars if you have billable time, but we'll talk about another method too if you're not billing, but the dollars that the firm is losing. They love numbers, right? So if you have a billable rate and billable hour requirement and you can show because you've spent 90% of your time. Okay, so she says, I don't have a requirement. I'm in-house working for an oil company, but I do track my hours. So there is data. Yay. Give them that data and say, but for this 90%, and make sure it's 90%, right? If you're tracking it, then you'll know for sure. Maybe it feels like 90%, but it's not quite, right? Whatever it is, though, it's too high. If it's even over 50%, it's too high. And show them what you could be doing if you weren't doing this administrative work. The data has to show them what they're losing out by having you do administrative. Because right now, it's not a problem to them if you're just saying yes to everything. If you're just doing it, then somebody's doing it. Who's doing it? Oh, Stacy will do it. Okay. So just bring the data to that conversation and then set a deadline for yourself because, in the context, she was telling me, about the administrative work and stuff. And I get it, especially at 51, if you've been working for a while. Tell me how many years of experience you have in the industry, Stacy. You are doing a disservice to what I call paralegal career security, right? If you spend too long in a job where if you look back at the bullet points from your last resume and see what you were doing at your other job, and now you see that you're at this job and all you're doing 90% is administrative, and you stay there for 3, 4, 5 years, you're tanking your career opportunities for the future because that next employer always wants to see growth. What did you do at this position? And then what have you been doing for the last 5 years? Oh, administrative stuff. That means you're not keeping up with the technologies to do the best job that you can. You've probably lost some of the skills, right? If you stay that long. So set a deadline. I can't give you the deadline other than I would suggest give it at least 60 to 90 days, maybe more. And the third would be to start looking for that new position while you're under that deadline, while you're still employed. The best time to find a paralegal job is when you have a paralegal job. I know people say that, but a lot of people don't listen. So please, as much as the administrative work sucks, even if it goes beyond that 90 days and you haven't found anything that you're interested in, don't leave. Do not leave that job to be unemployed to go find a new job. Keep looking for a new job. Oh, she's got over 20 years of experience. Yeah. 20 years of experience, 51 years old. You are prime material. Like recruiters would be knocking down your door. So that would be but give it, especially if it's a good position, right? You're working in-house for an oil company. You don't have a billable hour requirement. Everybody on here is going, wait, where's she work? I want that job. But do you see how it all sounds good? Like if you were to jump into a Reddit post, I'm sure that people would be commenting like, "Don't complain." Like, I would love that job. I'll spend the next 15 years doing that. Well, that's okay, but if the company closes in 8 years and you've spent 8 years doing administrative work and now you have to go find a new paralegal job, that's not going to be good for your career. So let me make sure I'm telling you this very clearly. I am not telling you to leave your current job. What I'm telling you to do is first have the conversation with the data, track your time though, right? So that when you bring that data to them and you tell them, this is what I'm capable of, don't just do that though. Also say, my skills are being wasted. I could be doing all of these other things for the company and I'm not. So yeah, that's what I would recommend. Feel free to jump on, Stacy. I don't see any other, if anybody else wants to jump into the chat and give Stacy some tips. This isn't just about, I should have made this clear at the beginning when I was telling you what the Paralegal Growth Hour is. This isn't just about me and what I say. It's what do you guys have to add? Okay, so let me see. I've got a hand raise. Oh no, that was from Myrna. Okay, Myrna, I'm going to put your hand down just to make sure that and then go put it back up if you want to come back on. But I think that that was just down because you were raising your hand that you were here. Christina, that's good. Does Stacy have an assistant? Do you have an assistant or do you have anyone in your department that has less experience than you that you could delegate some of that to? That would be a good point. I should have asked about the structure of your team because um, that might matter, right? If there are people that you could delegate to. And Christina added, I've had similar experiences. Once I pointed out how much time I was spending on admin tasks, they hired me an assistant. Nice. That goes back to, I've said this a lot. I kind of say it a lot on the podcast mostly, but it goes back to if you don't ask, the answer is always no, right? What's the worst that can happen if you're doing all that administrative work and you don't have an assistant and you don't ask, then the answer is always no. If you do ask and they say no, then they say no. That's it. So she says, no, I feel like I am the assistant. There's another paralegal on the team and we split the work, but she doesn't mind because she was an admin before being promoted to a paralegal. Okay, that brings me to another point. Well, first I want to ask, has it always been that way? How long have you worked there and has it always been that way? Because then that tells me, especially if they hired someone who was an admin before being promoted to a paralegal, that maybe the team you're working on doesn't know how to properly utilize a paralegal. They think, and this may be because all they've ever worked with were people who called themselves a paralegal, but were really just doing admin work. And that comes from, I've said this before, I'm sorry for any attorneys if you're on the call here, but I blame attorneys for that, right? People who have tried to regulate the paralegal title and say, oh, there should be a national certification exam to test, whether or not you're actually a paralegal when you're being hired as a paralegal and all that. And I say, no, you need to tell attorneys, mostly at smaller firms, solo firms, to stop hiring people who are administrative assistants and giving them a paralegal title because they can, right? So of course that person is going to say, I'm a paralegal because the attorney who just hired them said, you're my paralegal. They're doing all administrative tasks. They're not functioning as a paralegal. They're not being paid as a paralegal. So then it brings down national salary averages because it looks like we've got paralegals, being paid $25,000 a year when they're admin assistants. And then that paralegal leaves and goes to another firm as a paralegal, but they only know how to do admin work. Like what? That's not a paralegal, a person who gets hired in an admin assistant role, given the paralegal title, doesn't even know enough to say to that attorney, well, wait a minute, am I a paralegal or am I an administrative assistant? They don't know. So they say, okay, I'm your paralegal. So if they've only ever worked with people like that, then maybe they don't even realize what a paralegal is capable of doing. Gwen says it sounds like that legal team needs an assistant who helps run the department, which would allow the paralegals to actually do paralegal work. Yeah. And I wonder how many years of experience well, not a lot, right? Because she was an admin before being promoted to a paralegal. You have the opportunity, Stacy, you have the opportunity with 20 years of experience, right, to show them this is what a paralegal is capable of. And maybe that's what you do when you bring the data, right? This is what I'm capable of doing. This is what I was doing at my prior job. And the worst thing that can happen is they're going to say, well, that's not what you're going to do at this job. It's going to be this. Okay. Then you know to start looking. All right, I'm going to open up for any questions, comments, feedback. Want to talk about anything going on in the paralegal industry? Just give me a hand raise. If you're only on audio, if you're not on video, give me a hand raise. I can tell you a little something about if you're interested. This happened last weekend. Couple of things actually. So I spoke at a paralegal conference here in Florida. And so it was like between three paralegal associations, Brevard County Paralegal Association, Volusia County Paralegal Association, and Central Florida. And so I went and spoke. It's about an hour here from here. I live in Brevard County. This is why they asked me. After I spoke, a couple of things that I took away. So one, I posted one of it I did a LinkedIn newsletter about it. It impacted me that much. I had paralegals coming up to me afterwards, so many of them just thanking me for putting out, like doing these types of things. And I just started this year. Some of them who said, I've been reading your blog articles and following you for 10 years, right? Since they started their career. And one in particular came up and said that she had taken a course like many years ago, and it was in her first year of being a paralegal. And she said, you changed the trajectory of my career. I have you to thank where I'm at right now. And she started getting teary eyed and asked if she could hug me. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to start crying right now. It was so like genuine. And that's why I started doing these monthly growth hour things is because I started realizing with AI coming in and you never know who's who and if anything's real anymore. And I think or thought I need to do more in person or more live things like this where there's connection, where people can actually know, hey, she's a real person. This paralegal boot camp thing, this isn't owned by some company in some random state that's just. And I just felt like we all kind of need more personal connection, especially. Anyways, I wanted to share that because I just loved that. And I am going to start doing more in person type of events. I think I've even got too comfortable being on the internet. Technically, I'm on the internet right now, but okay, I have something coming in and I'm not going to use Oh, you put your name on here. Okay, so Michelle. Yeah, you're in the chat so everybody can see it. Okay. And it looks like she came in from her iPhone. So if you want to take yourself off audio, you can, but I'll just read the question for now. I have worked in the field for over 25 years and my current employer for over 14 years. Each job provided different skills in various areas of law. I'm told to only put the past 10 years only to list my employers on my resume. I have reworked my resume to include bullet points for my skills near the top. Some of my previous employers would look very good to be listed on the resume. What should I do about this? I don't know who told you to only put the last 10 years on your resume, Michelle, but if you've been in the field for over 25 years and the last one was 14 years, that's a big chunk just in one employer. So I don't see what the issue would be. I don't know. You guys tell me if that's what everybody's saying now. I think so. To me, when I used to teach paralegal resumes and job searching based on being a paralegal manager, I would say if that 10 years was all paralegal experience and then the previous 10 years or 15 years in your case, because you said over 25 years, if the previous 15 years was at a totally non-relevant, non-legal, and when I say non-relevant, let me explain. If you were, let's say you've had 14 years working as a personal injury attorney and 10 years prior to that you were working in healthcare institutions, that's still relevant, even though it's not a law firm. The skills are transferable, especially if you're going to apply for like another med mal or anything health related. So, if that 10 years was you were managing a Chili's restaurant, no, right? But if it's relevant and the skills are highly transferable and or that employer name is highly recognizable, then I would include it. Even if it wasn't, if there's like a gap in there, like let's say you have of those 10 years at the bottom, right? 14 years at the top, 11, I guess would be for 25. So 14 at the top, 11 at the bottom. If you have a 5 year gap that was not relevant, I wouldn't leave that employer out, right? Say you've got one down here that is a law firm. You spent 5 or 6 years doing something totally non-relevant, and then you got 5 more years up here in a law firm. Don't leave that gap just because it's not relevant. But I wouldn't take up any space. One of the things I used to teach in the paralegal job search one is to look at your resume white space as highly valuable real estate. So if you have a non-relevant position, just list the date, like the years, the name of the employer, and just one sentence. Don't take up any more than one sentence for non-relevant positions. And I love the bullet points at the top with the skills. One of the things that I talked about, I think we talked about this in one of the growth hour ones, but I'll add it here for you, Michelle, is now with AI, this is something, even if you're scared of AI, if you're scared of AI, you need to get in my AI boot camp. That's one thing I can tell you because that's what I do. I take the scary out of it. But the best use of AI, even if you're not using it in your law firm, is to learn how to use it to take job positions that are advertised, your updated resume, which it can also help you with, and then tell AI to rewrite your resume with those skills that the employer is looking for in mind, right? Without, and you can be very specific with it, that's what I teach you in it, without changing the actual job that you did, right? So that it doesn't hallucinate and all that. But that's the best. I have people who tell me they have had the best resume of their life come out of that. And it's so easy because you can change it with each one, right? Just little tweaks. If they're asking for this, And I say this, which is exactly what they're asking for, then why not say it in the way they're asking for it so that they immediately, at first glance, they see that bullet list of skills at the top and they see she's got 6 of the 10 that we're looking for. Okay, Gwen, I'm interested in learning how to grow in my position so that I could move out of the traditional law firm and into a legal coordinator or legal administrator position. That's good, Gwen. What's interesting is I kept thinking, like, now that I've been doing this for so long, do I need a paralegal manager boot camp, right? How to teach people to move into management positions. But I know that those are few and far between compared to paralegal positions. So, first, I would say upskill, Gwen. Depending on the size of the firm, jump in there and tell me the size of the firm, or jump on audio if you want to talk about this. Because then Christina says, good topic. I'm shifting towards paralegal manager, training legal assistants, and it's a bit of an adjustment to not work on billable projects. Oh, and there's some good advice in here on resumes and LinkedIn for Michelle. So make sure, Michelle, I know you're on your iPhone, but hopefully you can still jump into the chat and read those. So for moving into leadership positions, to me, you've got to upskill depending on what kind of certifications and courses you've got. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. Just if you're not going to try to do it in your, because you said you want to move out of the traditional law firm and into a legal coordinator or legal administrator position. So those two are going to be two different things. If you want a legal administrator position, I would look at, so there's SHRAM certification, the Society of HR Professionals. I think there is, yeah, Society of HR Professionals. I would first go to the ALA site, the Association of Legal Administrators. I think it's not ala.org, I don't think. I think because that's so common of an acronym, but it's the Association of Legal Administrators. Go to their website and devour everything you can. Who are their vendors? What kind of people? What certifications do their members have? Most of them have the SHRAM certification. It's an actual, and it's expensive, so you got to commit. It's expensive and time consuming, but I can guarantee you that, especially if you don't have a lot of hands-on experience doing that kind of work, that certification will immediately say to a firm, I've got the training, right? Because they go through not just how to be, because a paralegal manager is different than a legal administrator position. So, legal administrator, you're going to be expected to know all the sides of HR, budgeting, finances, all of that kind of stuff. And that's what you will learn through that SHRAM certification. And I'm not sure, but it used to be where there were companies just like in like getting NALA certified or NIFBA. There are companies that you can purchase like how to prep for the exam, and they teach, that's what the courses do. And then you sit for the SHRAM exam. SHRAM something, but I know it's SHRM. There's also, I have seen, so I am pretty active, more so in the IPMA. So the IPMA, and I think that one is the IPMA.org. So back when I was a paralegal manager, I was a member of their association, and a lot of them would go get like what's called a CLM, certified legal manager. So if you're wanting to move more into the legal coordinator or paralegal manager role, that might be a better option for you because it's not going to be as HR and budget and finance heavy. It's going to be more on the management side. It's not a paralegal manager necessarily, so it would be a little bit more open. One of the things that I'd be careful about with that is the organization that you're doing the coursework through. Is it going to allow you always go look and see What's it going to take for me to sit for this exam? Or, in other words, is the place where I'm going to take the course from accredited? Like, am I going to get accredited hours to be able to sit for whatever this exam is if I take this course? And be very careful, right? That you're not, because this could be a two or $3,000 investment. And I think a lot of them will let you pay over time, but make sure you have Googled them to death. You go on Reddit, you look up that company and make sure that when you take that course, you will be able to sit for whatever that exam is. I think that's the initial certified legal manager. So the IPMA, ALA. So in addition to the national ALA, every state and or city, depending on how big the city is, has a local chapter. So for example, when I lived in Atlanta, there was an Atlanta chapter of the ALA. And those places are where like you can meet like the local HR people. That's the thing with the ALA. The ALA is so big, it's not just legal administrators, even though it's the Association of Legal Administrators. There are CFOs of law firms in there, CMOs, chief marketing officers, chief technology officers. It's not just legal administrators, it's all different. And if what you'll be able to see is they might not all be called legal administrators, and you might be able to see that there's other opportunities as well and say, oh, what does that role do? I might be interested in that, and you'll be able to learn more about it. But do what Christina's doing, right? Is she's starting to do the role. This would be at your current firm. She's starting to take on some of the things that would normally be in that role before she ever has the title. So, for example, before I became a paralegal manager, I worked at Holland and Knight for many years. I was a litigation paralegal in their Atlanta office, but I worked on such big cases that I would also work on cases in the New York office, in Florida, Washington, D.C. And because I had big cases in other offices and the partners in those offices were managing them, I had what was considered, so back then it was a paralegal assistant who maybe was brand new out of school, had a paralegal certification or degree, and they would report to me. So they were doing my work when I wasn't there, or at least, lower level work that I was supervising them on. And so when I was recruited to go interview at the job, the paralegal manager position at a different firm, that helped because even though I wasn't a paralegal manager, didn't even have the title. I didn't have the title legal coordinator, nothing like that. As a senior paralegal, I was managing junior paralegals. Do you want to jump on, Gwen, and talk about it? I get it if you don't want to. Oh, so she says, but moving within the firm is not very doable. Yeah, and I'm kind of glad that you said that, Gwen, because I I think that I had more success as a paralegal manager because that role was in a different firm. I think that it would have been a lot different because at the time, Holland and Knight, as big as they were, they didn't have a paralegal manager. They didn't have even legal coordinators in offices. As paralegals, you reported to the partner in charge of that practice group. They were ultimately responsible for paralegals. And then HR was, HR. I don't know that I would have had that kind of success because, in addition to just the burden of learning how to be a paralegal manager, I would have had the burden of how do I get rid of that label that they've put on me for all these years? And how do I get the other senior paralegals in the firm who might be at my level or more senior to recognize me as their boss? I think that it's not doable. I know lots of people who have successfully navigated that, but I just kind of feel lucky that I didn't have to. So Gwen says, I supervised my assistant who now has a new job making double her salary. I did interview at a different firm for a position that was supervising the assistance of a team. Unfortunately, they eliminated the role due to budget issues, but I feel like that position would be a good start. Yeah, any type of supervision that you can take on, but if you want an extra leg in the door, I would say see what type of courses or certifications you could take that would show, okay, because that would have been, I mean, that would have been great if at the time, but I wasn't looking for a paralegal manager position. They approached me, but it would have been great at the time if I had some type of HR course under my belt and or a certification. And if the certification is too, let me add this, if the certification is too much, it's too expensive, it takes too long, then at least find a reputable course that you could take that would at least give you some insight into what it's like to do budgeting, how to predict profitability for paralegal groups. And especially if you want that type of position, the easiest way to get that is going to be at law firms that have billable hour requirements because I could show an ROI year over year how I was improving the profitability of the paralegal group. And, it's funny, the managing partner told me the reason they gave me the job is so I had, in preparing for the interview, I so I'd already talked to the recruiter what the problem was with the firm, and it was going to be their first paralegal manager position, their official manager position. So I obviously had the job description and the bullet points of what they wanted out of this position. And I sat down and spent a long time the weekend before preparing, and I put together a list of this what could I do knowing what I know about paralegals, what could I do and what would a paralegal program look like for me that I would love to have worked at a firm like that had that type of, and I wrote out a list of this is what I would want to do in the first 30 days, 90 days, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. So I literally almost wrote a little bit like it wasn't a business plan, but I wrote, this is what I would do. So for example, so I sat down and asked myself, well, the first thing I got to find out is what these people do, right? So I want to sit down and have one-on-ones with the paralegals, and then I want to have a group meeting with the paralegals. I want to have one-on-ones with the practice group chairs, maybe some individual one-on-ones with like the rainmaker partners, all that kind of stuff. So, and I literally wrote it down in a checklist. And so the managing partner had asked me a question during the interview. So, what would be your plan to, now that you know, I've told you what the problem is with the paralegal group? And I said, he said, what would be your plan to turn around the group to be able to make them more profitable? And I said, well, it's funny you ask because I sat down this weekend and put together a plan. Obviously, there would be some adjustments based on what you just told me, but he said, well, can I see it? And I handed it to him. And he said, that's why he hired me. So, I mean, all I had done, I had no HR certifications. And this was for an AmLaw 200 firm where I was managing, at that time, it was just the Atlanta office. So it was only, 20 or 30 paralegals and some case assistants. But then I had done such a good job at the Atlanta office that they had me do the same thing, replicate that in the New York office and then in the San Diego office. And so at the end of the day, I was managing over 100 paralegals without HR certifications or anything. But just to increase your odds of being able to get the position. And I will tell you, I didn't have to do the HR side other than their annual performance reviews and then come up with like my budget, but the budget was dictated. Here's your number from HR, figure out how to make that work. So I didn't have to do a lot of that kind of stuff. But if you're working in a smaller firm or a mid-sized regional firm, you will be expected to do that. So it does kind of depend on where you want to land too. Did that help? Gwen? I hope that wasn't overwhelming. It makes me think I want to do a paralegal manager boot camp. You're welcome. Please, Christina, please do. It is kind of insightful that you asked that question, um, Gwen, and that Christina jumped in there because the other thing I was thinking as I was driving home from that paralegal conference was, wow, I forget that there are people in my network of people on my email list, or maybe they're not on my email list, but they just follow me or they listen to the podcast or they purchased a course. Like there are people who purchased the litigation bootcamp course. I made it available online sometime around 2015. Before that, it was just live where I would go city to city. So there are people, if they took that course in 2015, they're now 10 years, 11 years into their career. And I'm like, oh, they could be potentially moving into paralegal manager positions now. I swear to you, I was thinking that on the drive home. You guys are okay. Let me think about it for a while because I'm just now currently like I'm redoing my Bill Blauer boot camp and I'm revamping the litigation boot camp right now. And that has to go up soon because I've been talking about it and it's been sitting literally a stack on my desk. I look at everybody's like, please do. Oh boy. Thanks for the motivation, you guys. That could be a fun course. While I've got you on here, let me ask you about this then, because to me, it seems like that would be where it would kind of be more like a mastermind, where it was me putting out the course, right, and or doing it live on a weekly or bi-weekly, monthly basis, doing it live, recording it, where you can watch the recording if you can't attend. But there would have to be a lot of, not a lot, but at least a couple of live coaching calls. Christina, the team I'm putting together, will need the Bill Blair Boot Camp. Yes. And that was one of the things that I thought if I ever did do a paralegal manager boot camp, I would include the billable hour boot camp in that so that upcoming paralegal managers could teach that to their paralegals, right? That they would have access, how do you, because this was why I was so successful. I think it helped that I worked at a firm that had such a big billable hour requirement and they were pretty strict about it, meeting it, is I was able to take the Atlanta paralegal group had like let's say 20 paralegals when I started. Almost none of them were meeting their billable hour. And when you ran the profitability numbers for that group, it was around negative 750,000 a year. So it was costing the firm $750,000 a year. They should have been revenue generators, right? Within 1 year, I got it to where it was negative 250,000. And you think, Anne, geez. But that meant $500,000 more in the pockets of those partners. They were splitting it amongst, hundreds. I don't know if there were hundreds of partners, but that's a $500,000 improvement, right? So that then by the next year, I was positive 250,000. Now you're talking $1 million more in the pockets of those partners. And then it just went from there. And that's why they were like, okay, go do that to the New York office. Okay, go do that to the San Diego office. So it does make you, if you do something like that, Gwen, and you go to work for as a legal administrator or any type of management role in a law firm that has a bill of hour requirement, if you can do that and turn around where you can show this is what I'm doing for the firm's bottom line, it's an easy way to get really good bonuses and salary increases because who wouldn't give somebody a big bonus? You're like, okay, wait, I just put $500,000 in these partners' pockets. Yeah, I think that's worth a $40,000 bonus, you know? So, okay, one more. I'm going to read Gwen's comments. I'm sorry, anybody, if you need to jump off, I know it's Saturday. Oh, I see a lot of people have jumped off. If the client is an insurance company, make sure the entries meet their requirements. Example, paralegal cannot bill any time that would be considered clerical. Oh, because there's some questions up here. My boss talked to me this week about learning AI. Christina, you're not in the AI boot camp? It actually closes. Enrollment closes on Thursday, the 14th.
Oh, May 14th?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know you had it. Look at your podcasts and things,
Yeah, here, let me put the,
trying to
well, so
learn and yeah,
this
so
this is
it's
the
all
abbreviated, I'm going to put the abbreviated website in here. I think this should bring you to the course page, ai-trainingbootcamp.com. And I do monthly live group coaching calls inside that because AI is changing. So the course is here's how to take the scary out of it. Here's why you should be cautious. Here's what you got to do to prevent hallucinations, biases, and all that. Because to me, as paralegals, we got to know the why instead of just saying, "Oh, don't trust it for case law" or "Don't trust it for this." We got to know, well, what's the background? Why is it doing that? And that will help me prevent myself from using it for that. But so it takes you through all of it, how to use it. And then I also created a special little robot at the end that you can go in and it'll evaluate this is how much time a day I'm spending on this type of work. I'm in this practice area. Here's these tools that you should start with. But I teach you how to use ChatGPT, Claude, and all that. And then every month, this is my favorite part. Every month I go live and we start the call with what have you been using AI for in the last month? And people are bouncing ideas off of each other like, oh, I never would have thought. And some of these people, their firms aren't using AI or they've forbid it, but the paralegals are using it either to advance their own career, learn how to handle like tricky, sticky situations like what we talked about today, update their resumes, do all that kind of stuff. So, but the ones who are using it are jumping in here saying, yeah, this is what I've used it for this month. So my boss asked me to present a proposal to participate in the AI boot camp.
One idea that I would have for the AI, if I could just recommend, is also what I've used it for is for my billing entries. I put them in a certain way and then I have AI check it and then I put the particular state, the city, and if they would be acceptable in that particular category of law that I'm working with. And sometimes it'll beef it up for me and then it'll tell me how much time I should have spent on that task. And I compare it to the time that I actually spent. And I don't know if some paralegals do that, but sometimes like it'll take me an hour, but I think, maybe this should have taken me 45 minutes, you know. So I underbill. And then when I compare it to AI, it tells me like, no, this task should have taken you this amount of time. So it's helpful for that, or that I've used it for is for billing entries.
Okay. So Myrna, I'm just going to caution you here.
Uh-huh.
What tool are you using or what version is it like?
Perplexity Pro.
Okay.
And
Um,
and I don't use it exactly to it. It just gives me a comparison or how to make my entry. Like if I say I got a minute order and I looked at it, it'll tell me like if I don't feel like doing the whole entry, it'll tell me like, communicate it with the website portal to obtain, you know, the minute order reviewed and analyze it, something like that. It'll instead of me thinking of it, it'll think how it should be written,
mhm.
something like that.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I'm going to say that's good because not every firm takes my Bill Blauer boot camp. But what I teach inside the Bill Blauer boot camp is if you want to show the real value of the work that you did, you're really the only person who can write the time entry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially because AI has a tendency to be very vague, ambiguous, and I most definitely would not trust it to how much time it should have taken you for two reasons. One is as a timekeeper, your role in the firm, so there's two roles, timekeeper and billing partner. As a timekeeper in the firm, your only role is to accurately record the amount of time spent on a project, thing, or task. That's it. If you spent 2.5 hours, your job is to record 2.5 hours. It's the billing partner's job to determine if that is should be billed to the client. Because if AI is suggesting you should have done it in 2.2 hours or 1.9, first I'd ask, where did it get the data from? Because all of AI is based on the data that it was trained on. And I can't imagine, maybe there were law firms giving it their billing sheets, but I can't imagine they were. But maybe there is stuff out there that, I mean, it obviously isn't just, it didn't just get the data just from law firm websites, right? But the bigger thing is that you could be impacting. So I call it ghosting billable hours, but what you're impacting is what it looks like to the firm is you're not working hard enough, right? If you take a 2.5 and everybody says, but Myrna, I can do it in 2.1, or the paralegal down the hall can do it in 2.2, or this person only bills 1.9 for it, but you truly, like you accurately recorded, I spent 2.5 hours on this, then it makes, at the end of the day, when you don't meet your billable hour requirement, it's just that you didn't meet it. You didn't bill enough hours. You can't go back to all those little point twos and point threes that you took off the top because they're gone. They've disappeared, right? You're not going to remember a year and a half from now to say to, the paralegal manager or the partner or whoever who's saying, hey, Myrna, why didn't you meet the billable hour requirement? You're not going to remember all of those. And even if you were to say to them, well, because I thought this was a little too high, or so and so said this was too much time, they're not going to, I'm just telling you that for your own protection. They're not going to care, right? Especially if it happens year after year after year. So just be careful with that. That being said, I think that that area is going to be ripe for AI eventually, where it is going to be feeding on firm data and stuff. Here's a perfect example. One of the law firms that took my Bill Bar boot camp a few, 2, 3 years ago, I still do group coaching calls with them occasionally just to keep them motivated and stuff. They have a timekeeping system that came out. They were part of the beta launch of this timekeeping software that is loaded on your computer and it tracks everything you do all day long and it's writing time entries for you. And at first, people were kind of, some of them would tell me, I'm kind of creeped out because it's watching what I'm doing. It's this, that, and the other. But my response is, well, hopefully you're not using your work computer to check Instagram, right? Or Facebook. If you're doing it, you're doing it from your phone. You're not doing it from your computer. So why not let it track you? And it literally will say how long they spent inside a Word document revising, and then whatever the title is. And so now that during the last call, they had been using it about a year and a half now, and everybody loves it. It's really expensive, but what always happens with legal tech, right? Initially, it comes out, it's expensive because it's exclusive, and then everybody else figures out how to do it, and it becomes more mainstream and affordable. Gwen, the law firm already tracks you. Exactly. Right. So why not just make it easier to draft the time entries? And literally, they now only have to go in and just slightly edit those time entries. Oh boy, we could talk about billable hours forever, guys. All right, it is Saturday. So thank you for staying extra. Thank you. So we next month, same time, same place, second Saturday of the month. So it'll be July 13th. And if this is the first time you attended this, when you signed up for the first one, you will get notifications now for all of them. And so you don't have to go back in and say, oh, I want to attend July 13th. Just know that if you unsubscribe from the email list, then you won't get notifications. So just make sure that you check your email, but just put it on the calendar and use the same link. I will think about that paralegal manager course. I will. All right. It was great seeing everybody. Have a wonderful Saturday. Beautiful weather. I hope everybody's having. All right. Bye for now.